Dr. Kerrie Saunders.
Yes.
You have a PhD in natural health and a licensed psychologist, and I think dealing in this arena, the psychology degree probably helps a lot.
Oh, it certainly does.
So if you meet somebody and they say, "Oh, I'd really like to be vegan, but I'm not quite sure how," what is your advice?
Well, my first response is you're probably a lot closer than you think. And they look at me with surprise and I'll say, well, do you like corn on the cob? Do you like peanut butter and jelly? Do you like pea soup? And I start listing off very familiar, delicious comfort foods that they're already eating, not aware of it. And then, of course, they'll laugh and I'll say, well, it's just a matter of building upon that foundation.
Oh, that's great. And so when they say, "Well, what do you eat?" or they would say, "I want to go shopping later today," or "I've got to make dinner for my family tonight," just what would you say?
Well, again, I would stick with familiar foods they're already eating, because I think the apprehension comes when people think, I could never do that. Well, when you remind them, you're already doing much of this, or there are just minor ingredients, substitutions that we can make that replicate the same recipes. For example, in cornbread, instead of adding the egg, we add an egg replacer. It tastes the same, looks the same, still comfortable. So we're just kind of reminding the general public that this is not that far of a stretch, and it's really delicious.
Yes, and when you mentioned egg replacer, some people feel that it's the liquid that they still get in the dairy counter, which you're not speaking of that.
No, actually, we're talking about replacing a chicken egg with a product that's made out of tapioca root flour. You whisk it with water, it foams up, pour it in. It's just like an egg in pancakes, muffins, cookies, and so on.
When you get up in the morning, what do you have?
Oh my goodness. First of all, I'm a huge fan of variety. So
Good.
I might have a burrito with black beans and salsa in it for my breakfast. I might have soup or stew. I might have oatmeal. Once in a while I'll have some of the health foodie kind of cereals. You know, they'll make, for example, cornflakes only out of amaranth. It's just a different grain. Or a quinoa cereal or a granola. I really do like variety. And normally I'll pair some various fruits or berries with my breakfast. That kind of makes it feel like a dessert.
So do you think variety has its own purpose in itself?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. What is
Now,
that?
remember, my position as a functional food consultant is in an integrated medicine center. So we're working with people who want to use food as medicine. So, for example, when it comes to food allergies and food intolerances, our best protection is a wide variety of foods. We'll find the foods you repeat are usually your troublemakers. So let's say you have butter every day. That's a troublemaker. We've got the addictive quality, but we've also got extra cholesterol and saturated fat and veterinary hormones and so on coming into the system. So if you take a good look at what you repeat, it's probably a troublemaker. And I can go into that addiction thing if you're interested.
Yes,
but,
very much so.
But to answer the variety question, variety is very protective.
The addiction aspect is something I don't think most people think about.
Okay.
And it would be very valuable for people who want to start out to understand why they are finding themselves not letting go of certain foods. And would you elaborate on that?
Certainly. Well, we could probably separate the people in the room into chocolate cravers, salt cravers, sugar cravers, milk cravers, and there's a reason
cheese
for that
cravers.
actually. Right, exactly. So usually our salt and sugar cravers, we would answer that with electrolyte enhancement. So making sure that they're getting enough potassium and magnesium and sodium, for example, from celery, not from salt. Salt is our least preferred source of sodium.
What are others?
Celery is my first choice.
Really?
Yes, in fact, that's what we'll use to flavor soups. So usually that's an electrolyte issue. However, when we get over to the dairy addicts, basically what's going on there is called casomorphine addiction. And there's a protein that's present in all mammal milk. So cows, monkeys, giraffes, humans. And casein is one of the two main proteins that actually this protein will cross into the blood-brain barrier into the brain, become casomorphine, so similar to all other opiates. And we think it's naturally present in all mammal milk because we want the baby of the species to want to breastfeed so the species can propagate. But the issue comes in here. Human breast milk is metered at 2.7 grams per liter. So in other words, a very tiny amount compared to cow's milk, which is 26 grams per liter. So cow's milk is highly addictive to a human. That morphine reaction, that morphine addiction. The other issue is when we concentrate from milk over to cheese, we have to multiply by 10 because it takes 1 gallon of milk. It takes 10 gallons of milk to make 1 gallon of cheese. 10 pounds of milk to make
Wow.
1 pound of cheese.
So it's very concentrated.
It's an
yeah.
extreme concentration of casein, which becomes casomorphine in the brain. So this is why we hear so many people say, I can give up my milk, but I can't give up my cheese and ice cream. So once we have that intellectual understanding of why I'm craving it and why for 3 days when I give it up, I have headaches and I'm moody and all I want to do is have another fix, we understand it's a form of an opiate withdrawal.
That's extraordinary.
It's
And-
amazing.
Yes, and so how do you start to overcome that?
Well, typically, we've got different personalities. Some people quit smoking cold turkey, some people need to wean off, some people use a patch. It's the same principle. Many of our patients at the clinic come ready to work, and they're just willing to give it up instantly. And we just warn them for about 2 or 3 days. You'll be kind of miserable, you'll be craving, you'll want another piece of cheese, but every time you have a bite, you're starting back at zero again with the withdrawal process. You're going to have to start all over. So you kind of have to white knuckle it for about 3 days. In the meantime, though, some people like to wean off, and they'll use what we call transition foods. So, for example, Daiya cheese. Veggie cheese still uses a little bit of the casein in it. So sometimes, in a similar fashion of cutting down on cigarettes, some patients will go from actual cow cheese to the veggie cheese and then to Daiya or some of the other completely
And would
dairy-free
you
cheeses.
spell that for us?
Daiya, D-A-I-Y-A.
Yes.
And that comes in, cheddar and mozzarella, but that's an idea.
And pepper jack now.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
So that's an idea of how we do treat it, in a sense, as a drug addiction. We're trying to help these people wean off of the foods they're addicted to. So some need a transition food, some really don't.
Well, I also know that you are aware of the allergy aspect of all of this as well. And I think that parents especially get to be concerned about their children because they're not always in sight, and then they know what they, and many times they're allergic or have a food allergy that they're not even aware they have.
Absolutely.
What are the most common ones, and how do you spot them?
Well, the list is probably very analogous to the foods that we eat almost all the time in our culture. So the most popular allergies we see are dairy, eggs, soy, wheat, yeast. The things that we tend to overdo in our culture, many people are developing sensitivities and then allergies too. So what we're learning about immunity, however, is that it's kind of a spectrum. We start with no reaction at all. Then some people have a sensitivity to a food, so they might say, well, I just feel a little tired when I eat that, or maybe I get a little upset stomach, but it's no big deal. Then we have a hypersensitivity. Then we've got different types of allergies along the way. For example, a contact allergy, you touch it and you have hives, or you put a food in your mouth and then your mouth swells. Maybe you have an IgE reaction. But typically what we're seeing is called IgG. It's a delayed food reaction. So I might eat something today and not really feel joint pain or a sleep disorder, a headache for 3 or 4 days.
Oh my goodness.
And what's happening is that food has now digested through, gotten out to my bloodstream, and that's where it's doing damage. So what we're learning is if there's a food that you know is kind of a troublemaker for you. In other words, you get a headache, you get a stomach ache, you just don't feel good the next day, you're getting water retention from it, stay away from it. We really want to allow the body to speak to us and let us avoid the things that are giving us trouble. The other rule is if there's any food that you know you repeat every day or several times a day, that's probably what's called allergic addiction. Because part of the allergic response is an opiate response to cover the pain so that the body can continue to function. So people end up getting kind of addicted to that secondary opiate response. Very common with dairy products, actually. A lot of the casomorphine reaction is also very intertwined with that opiate response to the pain of having an allergic response.
Do you think some people have a gluten problem and don't know it?
Oh, absolutely. Again, wheat's one of those foods we overdo in our society. You know, it's in noodles, crackers, breads, soy sauce. It's a filler in most of the veggie products. You know, veggie burgers and veggie dogs and so on are containing wheat. And I do think that we overdo the emphasis on grains. I really think that we need to look more at greens instead of grains.
Interesting. What are some of the symptoms that if someone does have a wheat allergy that they might have?
Well, this varies. Some people have skin disorders, you know, actual eczema, itching, very, very dry skin. Some people retain water. One of the body's main mechanisms to help protect its cells is called inflammation, which is actually a very miraculous process, and it was designed for us to use once in a while. Inflammation works like this. Let's say you have your cells, which should be nice and thick like a grape. Well, when these cell walls are attacked by allergens or toxins, what the body will do is take little Ziploc bags of water and pack them around the cell wall to protect the cell. Well, as a result, it is protected, but it also can't heal because we need a nutrient transfer and an electrolyte transfer to be occurring at all times. We pack this inflammation around. It's meant to be a short-term protection, but what ends up happening is your body also kind of gets stuck there, and we need to find ways to bring out that excess water to get in and repair with omega-3s. That's another reason I'm sure some of your other speakers have talked about omega-3s as important, and B vitamins and electrolytes, because these cells staying healthy means the body stays healthy and all of our systems stay healthy and we have the proper balance of energy. So when we really break nutrition down to the cellular level, we've got to keep healthy cells. And inflammation, secondary to things like wheat allergies and other allergies and other toxins you might be exposed to, hinders the body's ability to go forward and heal.
How do you get omega-3s when you don't want to include fish?
Well, in my own opinion, it's personally kind of disgusting to imagine eating fish or fish fat in order to get a nutrient, because they're basically pre-digesting greens in the oceans, and then when we extract that fat out and call it an omega-3 fatty acid, we're getting everything that was concentrated. We're getting the mercury, lead, PCBs, and other toxins in the water concentrated into that fish oil, unless you pay exorbitant amounts of money to try to have that extracted out. And there's research suggesting it's almost impossible to get that out. It takes quite a lot of processing, actually. So I would rather look at, well, where did the fish get it originally? They're getting it from greens. So humans absorb omega-3s from dark green leafy vegetables, pumpkin, and soy. But we really have concentrated omega-3 sources in hemp seeds, chia seeds, ground flax seeds, walnuts, pumpkin seeds, and then the highest source on the planet is actually purslane greens. That almost looks like a sprout, so you could put that on salads or in a sandwich.
Spell that for us.
Purslane.
Yes. And I think it grows wild as almost as a weed. So a lot of people might even have it in their yards.
That's right. Get with a good botanist and find your purslane.
Yes, that's fabulous. Well, you're involved also in a very exciting project. It's called the Michigan Firefighter
Yes.
Challenge.
Yes, very fun. Rip Esselstyn, who is the son of Caldwell Esselstyn, certainly a hero in our field using nutrition as medicine. Rip is a firefighter in Austin, Texas, and he wrote a book called The Engine 2 Diet. And I was on a field trip to Whole Foods, I call it. And my shopping days at Whole Foods are very fun for me. And I saw the book, and I started reading through, realizing it called my name for two reasons. A, I'm also vegan, and his book is called Plant Strong, another term for vegan. But also, I have firefighters in my family, and also firefighters saved my life personally in 1997.
Wow.
So I thought, well, firefighters like to compete. So how about if we put several cities against each other and have them compete on who can get healthiest?
Oh, that's
So
fabulous.
the first study we did in Michigan, or actually challenge, was 3 different cities. The second challenge was 6 different cities. And what was beautiful is all of their numbers went the right way. We wanted HDL to go up. That's a marker of cholesterol packaged and ready for excretion out of the body. So you want your HDL to be on the higher end. We wanted the total cholesterol to come down, the overall body weight to come down, the LDL to come down, the triglycerides, the blood pressure. And in every department, we got the right trend in the numbers, except one. Now, this is out of 9 different cities. And what a few of their members had done the night before is go out and have a very unhealthy dinner the night before the blood draw. And it literally affected their blood that quickly, within 24 hours.
Wow.
So although they had lost the weight, that cholesterol had jumped up because of that disgustingly high cholesterol meal within 24 hours. So the bottom line, this was about 60 firefighters altogether.
Wow.
And the bottom line was, I am still to this day, and this is very emotional for me, getting thank you emails and letters from these guys, because it not only affected their longevity on the planet, their ability to rescue us. It also affected their spouses, their parents, and their children. So it's had a ripple effect that I never even imagined.
How did you instruct them to eat?
Yeah, well, let's see. We started with food demonstrations and PowerPoint presentations explaining why we're going to a plant-strong diet. So I would very clearly, with math and comparisons, make the case that, for example, there is more bioavailable calcium and bone-building nutrients in broccoli than there would be in cow's milk, because many of them at the beginning stages still had a lot of the mythology that our culture has regarding food intake. So we kind of gave them the science, we gave them the food to try. We had potlucks with family members included so that we could all get on board and meet each other, have the children taste these recipes. I also hired 2 boot camp instructors, and their job was huge, to bring in functional fitness, meaning exercise habits that firefighters need for their profession, number 1. Number 2, they had to have a very keen understanding of the fight or flight response, because our firefighters and our police officers live in a stress environment. Every time the alarm goes off, they have a fight or flight response. They have noradrenaline, epinephrine, they have the adrenaline for focus and concentration, the heart rate goes up. But this happens 5 or 6 times a day for these people. So the end result of that is what's called adrenal fatigue, when the adrenaline gland just doesn't have anything left to give. That's why we see so many firefighters and police officers turning to stimulant foods, coffees, sugars, donuts.
Maybe even doctors and nurses too.
Oh, exactly, and shift work. That would be another common problem for these folks. So the fitness instructors would do all kinds of very fun activities, during the boot camps. I ran the boot camps right along with firefighters, and I always had the best heart rate. I was proud of that, but I was the longest term vegan. But let me just give a quick example. The fitness trainers would mimic that large muscle group, pulling a body out of a fire, for example, put the body down, and now that they're shaking with adrenaline, now they've got to maybe do an IV and do a very fine motor skill. So they would have us run until we were shaking or doing weights, and then all of a sudden we'd have to play Jenga.
Wow.
And pull this little tiny wooden tab out. And they did other things to train us to turn off that stress response. And this is important for everyone that lives in a high-stress job or a high-stress family. We would go from one station to another station, but our group was not allowed to progress until we brought our heart rates down to normal again in between the workouts. And the cool down was actually yoga and meditation.
Wow.
So it was a beautiful 8-week program with results that all of us celebrated. But to hear the individual stories would melt your heart. We had individuals that got rid of diabetic medications, blood pressure medications, cholesterol medications. And there were other comments like, I've never had so much stamina at a fire scene. That's so incredible, because the difference in 15 seconds worth of stamina could be saving their life or your baby's life.
Absolutely.
So really, truly wonderful results.
Oh.
So I'm excited, and when I get back to Michigan, we'll hopefully start another one.
I thank you, thank you, thank you.
Can I mention our new DVDs?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to mention that John Pierre's a celebrity fitness trainer, and I just had released at this conference When Bachelor Meets Homemaker. And it's a DVD series of very healthy, super nutrition, super simple recipes. So many of these recipes are similar to what we've used with the firefighters, actually. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you so much.